From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is a weekly podcast about consumption, and there is a lot of consumption this week going on. We are, of course, proud members of the You Run Podcast Network. You can find all of our old episodes, all of our upcoming episodes, and all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network at yourunpodcast.com. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast, and his name is Sean. Sean, how are you this evening?
John, I am the white man from town, and I want to know one thing from you. Did the old man touch you? Did the old man touch you?
Of course. Why do you think I have, I did not say thinner, though. I can tell you that for sure.
Nope. We'll say that a few times. We'll say that.
Yeah.
A lot.
So we're going to just go ahead and start the drinking game now. If you're listening to this and drinking, take a drink every time you hear the word thinner throughout the course of this episode, because I have a feeling it's going to happen several thousand times. But before we get to thinner, Sean, what have you been watching this week?
I've watched a few things. I want to kind of tie a bow on, well, I'm not going to tie a bow on the Dark Side of the Ring because we'll have one more episode of the season to go that I'll talk about next time. But I did want to talk about the Scream Queen Daphne, which was episode 9 of season 6. I think it was season 6. And Daphne, again, not familiar with this wrestler at all. Daphne was Shannon Spruill. Are you familiar with Daphne, John? I don't want this to be me just asking you or telling you about Daphne. Are you aware of Daphne?
I feel like with a name like Scream Queen Daphne, I should be, but I'm not.
She was kind of a popular wrestler that embraced the whole goth girl aesthetic, as John shows me a Hulk Hogan, a squishy Hulk Hogan.
There's a video to this. Anyways,
I was mesmerized by your Hulk Hogan, your squishy Hulk Hogan. Anyways, she was the first to really embrace this kind of goth girl aesthetic and gained a huge cult following. So she rose up through WCW and TNA, total nonstop action wrestling, if I remember that correctly. And her big claim to fame was this big scream that she would do when she was outside the ring or sometimes in the ring. And this whole episode kind of followed her rise to stardom, her rise through the ranks, and how she was kind of an up and coming wrestler until she took this big bump, basically, where she got thrown off the top turnbuckle and she went through this barbed wire wrapped table and she hit her head.
I've seen this person before.
Yeah, really. She hit her head really bad and got really concussed. And I don't remember if she like fractured her skull or had some issue, but she ended up coming back way too early, which a lot of wrestlers do, obviously to keep their spot so they don't lose their momentum. And she ended up getting concussed quite a few times and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ended up taking her own life. And one of the things that she noted was that she wanted her brain to be saved so that could be studied, for CTE research. So that is a Dark Side of the Ring episode. Kind of follows the dark side trajectory, but it was a very interesting episode. Next up, I watched, and you talked about this a couple months ago. I feel like by now, at least a month ago, if not 2 months, I watched This Is the Tom Green documentary.
Oh, yeah.
And that's on Amazon Prime.
This is his favorite documentary.
Yeah, it is. It's not the Green Tom show. It's the Tom Green show. This is his favorite show because it is his show. It's the Tom Green show. I don't remember. You like that. You like the documentary, right?
I did. I don't remember being a huge fan of Tom Green, like the show when it was on. I felt like, I think if you watch this show, I think you'll not you. I mean, if you've seen the Tom Green show, you'll understand what I'm going to say, but it's too Tom Green for me a lot of times. Like his brand of humor tends to be like, all right, you're kind of just being stupid for the sake of being stupid. But there were some bits that he did that were pretty good. There's one that they feature in the documentary that's from before he was on MTV, where he's doing the man on the street thing, and this guy just wants to get away from him, and Tom Green's not having it.
Where are you going?
This guy just gets he just gets furious with him,
very
and that's pretty good. But I mean, I don't have anything against Tom Green, the human being. He actually seems like, for what he became, being like a pretty major star, he seems pretty down to earth and like a decent human being from what we know from the outside. I mean, for all I know on the inside, he's, not, but
Horrible.
yeah, I don't have any reason from what I do know of him to like have anything negative to say about him.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the show came out on MTV, and it was kind of a bit of a revelation. And I remember watching it with my girlfriend at the time, and it was on, I think it was almost a nightly show, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong. It might have been a weekly.
I thought it was like a Sunday thing. Because wasn't it like the Sunday slot up until Jackass came around? And then when Jackass came around, that pretty much killed whatever was left of the Tom Green momentum.
Yeah, I think, they talk about it.
I'm remembering that wrong.
I don't remember exactly. Well, they did say that Jackass followed up this show, and Tom Green ended up kind of he publicized his testicular cancer and had a whole episode about it. Yeah. And he had to be opened up, and they had to do surgery on his check his lymph nodes to make sure that those were not ravaged by cancer as well. And I remember like him being basically, I don't know, a lot of people know this, but younger people don't know, like the monoculture, basically, that if you think someone is oversaturated or overexposed now, think of like 30 years ago and how you could not, if the media was pushing someone hard like Tom Green, you could not get away from him. Like he was on TV, they talked, anything that he did, he was talked about. I just remember I liked his show when it was new. And then over time, I just got so burnt out by this guy.
Yeah.
And he was everywhere. And they kind of go through that. The documentary, I know you talked about it, but just like as a refresher, they go through his career as like his Canadian show and him being a musician and him being in a rap group and going to New York and getting a demo and everything made. And he won a Juno Award, which is like a Grammy Award in Canada, Canada's Grammys. And they go through his TV career and his eventual movie career. And I feel like it was good that they concentrated more on his early career, because I have to say, once he was off MTV, I was so tired of him anyways by then. I didn't really care what he was doing, but they spend maybe the last 20 minutes of the documentary talking about his internet rise to fame, like how he really predicted or was a precursor for a lot of podcasts and doing a streaming show and all this stuff. And just to have guests out of his house, didn't have really an audience. And I think he ended up having an audience at some point. But the whole documentary is about him moving out of LA, moving back to Canada, and how he's basically wants to grow old in Canada and enjoys his life. And I'm sure he'll still do some kind of media thing. But I thought it was interesting, even as somebody who wasn't a fan of him in the late part of his MTV career, I can appreciate like all the things that how he achieves his success.
You don't need to be a fan of his to recognize that he's not a horrible human being. And I think that kind of shines through with his career, where you can't say that with a lot of people, whether they're in his position or just at some level of stardom. He just seems like he goes out of his way to try and be a decent human being. And that doesn't mean that he's out like rescuing homeless babies or whatever. It just means he's not being a prick, which is more than you can say for a lot of people in his position.
Yeah, and it's kind of a cool juxtaposition, because his show, if you watched his show, it was always very harmless. The things, the pranks that he would pull, and the things that he would do on his show. Obnoxious for sure, but harmless. Like he wasn't really, he was irritating people and annoying people. And I'm sure the things where he was, dressed up as or his disguise was that he had broken legs or something. He fell in a supermarket or a bodega or whatever and knocked over somebody's stuff. I'm sure they probably compensated the stores. He seems like there's that stereotype of Canadians of them being like overly nice. He kind of seems like he fits that. And I don't know if it's true, but I feel like if he were to go in a store and break something, he would like end up reimbursing them somehow. It just seems like that's the kind of guy he is. And I think that kind of sums up his kind of attitude. But the last thing I ended up watching, and I don't know if you watched this or if you talked about it, but Untold, The Fall of Favre. It's about Brett Favre.
I have watched it. I don't know if I told you about it or not, but I have watched it. Yes.
Yeah, that man, what a dick. I mean, I'm not a big fan of all the Untold stuff, but this didn't seem like it was as nebulous as some of those things seem to be, where they don't really have an opinion, or they have like a really
this one felt more
opinion.
Like a hit piece.
It kind of did, but he kind of deserves it, because he seems like a prick.
It's not just that. Yes, I agree with you. He absolutely deserves it, and he is a prick. But it felt like a hit piece in the sense that, well, this is very much like the Untold series for the most part. Like, they didn't really tell me anything I didn't know. They just
True.
like, it was interesting hearing, I don't remember her name because I'm not a Jets fan. The reporter
Jen
that he
Sturger.
sent his dick. Yeah, her. It was interesting actually hearing her talk candidly about the situation. Because prior to that, like, she kind of got swept up in the early 2000s, like, well, she's a bikini model or whatever. So like there's still very much an attitude that a lot of people have, like, well, she's kind of asking for it. I'm like, not so much. So to hear that, what he did kind of had a hand in like ruining her career, just one makes him that much of a bigger prick. But it was good to see someone actually give her a chance to tell her story and not come off sounding like belittled or anything like that. Like, they actually let her say her piece.
And to give some background, Brett Favre was a quarterback from Mississippi, and he played at South Mississippi University, or was it
Southern
University
Miss or something like that?
Yeah, something.
Yes.
Some Mississippi
somewhere southern Mississippi. Yeah.
And he got drafted by the Falcons. He didn't play, and he got traded to the Packers in Green Bay, and then he ended up playing, became this big like folk hero essentially around Green Bay. He led him to a Super Bowl. He was like a 3-time MVP, and then his career
probably a
starts
top
to
10
wane.
quarterback in the history of the NFL, more than just by numbers, not personality.
Sure. And then as his career started to wane, he said he was going to retire, and then he ended up going and playing for the Jets, and that's when he sent a dick pic to this woman, Jen Sturger, who was like they give like way too much credence to her background, I feel like, but she was, like you said,
she's basically a sideline reporter.
Yeah, I mean, she was an internet personality that got a job as a sideline reporter, and then he wanted to get her number really bad, sent her a dick pic. Years later, she kind of came out to Deadspin about it, and it blew up. And then even later than that, Brett Favre ended up getting a bunch of taxpayer dollars to build a volleyball fucking stadium for his daughter's university, and just stupid, and ended up getting all this money. And he was involved in this drug that they said would help treat CTE or concussions or something, where it was like this medication that you blew
Snorted
through this hose or something. What's that?
Yeah. I thought you snorted or something like that.
Yeah, you put like one end in your mouth and the other end in your nose, and you blow with your mouth, and it's supposed to push this mist or medication or whatever up into your nasal cavity, and that somehow cures your brain. I don't care to understand all of it, but this fucking dickhead getting $5 fucking million of taxpayer money, 2 of it directly to him, and all this shit. What a fucking shithead. Anyways, that's what. Yeah, he's a great guy. That's what I ended up watching. John, what did you watch?
We're from the Detroit area, so there is no love lost on Brett fucking Favre.
Maybe we're a little biased.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I wanted to kind of get this episode in now is because I didn't want it to go too far from when this came out. But I watched the new Fear Street Prom Queen movie that's on Netflix, and I have some opinions on it. I don't think there's enough interest there to do a whole episode on it, so I'll give the crash course on it. Sean, if you're looking to watch this, I apologize, but I'm going to spoil a little bit with it.
I'm going to plug my ears.
I'm not going to spoil the story, and I don't think you'll be surprised by this. I don't understand why, if you're going to set your movie in the 80s, like if that's like the time period that this movie is supposed to take place in, I don't get why this movie looks like it's a movie in 2025 where they're going to like an 80s theme party. Like they basically stopped short of giving everyone cell phones, but we've seen movies in the last couple of years, like Black Phone comes to mind. That movie looked like it took place in, I think that was supposed to be the 70s, but whatever it was, it does not look like it takes place in 2024 or whatever. This very much so just feels like, okay, well, just because you're in a school and you have David Bowie and shit like that playing over the, speakers doesn't mean it's 1988 like you're trying to sell. And just like the attitude of all these kids they have in the movie, it feels very modern. It doesn't feel like it just feels really out of place, which gives it this weird vibe over the whole thing. I also got annoyed with it because there's some really cool stuff in this movie as far as like kills and effects and whatnot. And when they do practical effects in the movie, it looks great. Like, I'm not complaining about that. Where the complaint is they kind of have, there's probably 3 or 4, it's probably closer to 3 shots where there's a bigger thing that happens, and it's all kill related, and it goes very, very CGI on those. And it just ruins the whole, like, it takes you out of it, because again, there's a lot of stuff that looks good that is probably primarily practical. I'm sure they touch it up digitally, whatever, but it looks good. And then when it doesn't, it just sticks out like a raw dick. It's not a fun thing to see. So I don't understand that. The other thing I found really weird with this, and I guess this one, I'm sure their target demographic is not, men in their 40s watching in their basement. It's probably kids or like younger folk
watching on their iPads.
Yeah, or on their cell phone or something, which I still don't understand how people watch full-on films on their cell phones. I couldn't do that. I don't want to stare at it that much. The cast is primarily kids. I'm assuming they're all teenagers. I don't really know. Side note on that, if you're going to cast teenagers in your movie, like actual teenagers, please don't try to make them be sexy. I just feel gross watching that. And there's a dance scene where it's like a lot of gyrating going on. I'm like, you need to be at least like 3 to 4 years older before I feel comfortable watching this. And even then, that's probably still creepy, but not, at least it's like not illegal.
You must be this tall to twerk in my movie.
Yeah, pretty much. But if you're going to do a throwback like 80s slasher movie, which is essentially what this is, okay, I get that you're not going to get who I'm about to say to play these kids, because that would just be, well, I would think it would be awesome, but it would be stupid. Why don't you get some like horror vets to play your adult characters? Like there's a couple teachers, a couple chaperones, parents and whatnot. There's a creepy janitor. Like I'm sitting there watching this. I'm like, why isn't Clinton Howard playing the fucking janitor? That'd be like a perfect thing just to have him show up for one day to be like, clean your own puke pile, kid, or whatever, and get the fuck off screen. It's those little nods, like, and again, I'm just saying people from that era. So if you think these are impossible gets, fine, but like, go get Felissa Rose or Barbara Crampton or something to show up in this for a couple scenes to be your adult character. Kids are probably not going to notice that any more than the Law and Order like extras that they have as the adults in this movie. But the adults who do find their way to this movie are going to see those little nods, and we eat that shit up just like any other person does. So it's just little shit like that I'm like, I can't imagine that would have cost them that much more, and it would have just made this feel like a lot more of what you're trying to achieve with this movie. So on a whole, it's watchable. I'm guessing, like you've mentioned a couple times, your daughter seems to be getting into like scary movies and shit like that. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that like kind of piques her interest, probably more so than the first 3 that came out, because especially in the first 3, the second movie just is basically a Friday the 13th knockoff. So there's a lot more violence in that. This one is like more contained. It's more to the point. It's a very simple story. Like you're not going to be watching this movie and being like, oh, I'm surprised by fucking anything. But I could see if you're, a preteen kid, how this be something that you could get into. So I'm just a jaded old man who, bitches on a podcast.
These are R.L. Stine, right? These are R.L. Stine penned movies. Okay.
So I assume there was a book off these. I think I read somewhere that there was a book from this. I don't really know. I read a little bit of Goosebumps when I was a kid, but I got over that pretty quick because I had already discovered horror movies. I'm like, it's fucking kids books, because they are kids
babies.
Books. Yeah. This is for babies.
I'm going to go jerk off till they live.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's a possibility. I don't know. It's like I said, it's not a terrible movie. And I like more of what they've done with this like franchise that they've built on Netflix than I dislike, but it definitely doesn't leave you without gripes. Another movie I kind of fell into. I told you I've been kind of dicking around on Pluto a little bit, and I had this on while I was like putting groceries away. Have you seen Death Warrant?
Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Yes, sir.
I'm
Jean-Claude Van Damme in a prison.
And this is slick back haired Jean-Claude Van Damme, right?
Oh yeah. Big time.
I'm pretty sure I've seen it.
I only saw like the last 30 minutes of this, so I have to go back and revisit it more, but I was already in love. I don't know how Jean-Claude Van Damme got in this prison. I'm assuming in this movie he's some kind of narc or some kind of cop or something like that.
He's probably wrongfully accused of killing somebody or something.
Maybe that. All I know is when I turned it on, like no more than 5 minutes later, Jean-Claude Van Damme is running away from literally like 100 prisoners. Like this is straight up like out of the end of Blues Brothers. Like every person they could get on set they put in like a prison jumpsuit, except for Jean. Well, he's in a jumpsuit too, but like, except for like whoever the warden is and like one guard. And they literally run for like a solid 3-minute stretch through this prison. I'm like, this is a really open prison. Like, these guys can just wander around fucking anywhere in this prison. And they're just chasing him the whole time. Like, these 100 dudes behind him are just like, "Rawr!" You know, they got their pitchforks and knives and whatnot as they're chasing him. I was like, I don't know what the fuck I just stumbled into, but I need to like spend some time with this stupid movie. And it ends in I won't kill that right now, but the way because it's a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, the big boss battle at the end, chef's kiss as far as like stupid karate fights in a prison. It's just so fucking ridiculous, and is definitely something that I feel like needs to be revisited at some point in the not too distant future.
I was going to say, I feel like I smell a future episode coming on.
Oh, it's I mean, we've done what, 2 JCVD movies? Like, that's not nearly enough. Is it 2? Or have we done 3?
2.
I think it's 2. So
Bloodsport, and
obviously not enough. The
Double
Twins
Impact.
one. Double Impact. Yeah.
There's 2 of them.
So that came on after Death Warrant, and my wife was watching it, and she was like, this is fucking dumb. I'm like, it gets so much dumber. And then she got to the sex scene, which is like, I forgot how graphic of a like weird sex scene is, intermixed with him just like power chugging Johnny Walker. And she just looks at, what the fuck is going on in this movie? I'm like, for this scene, I'm still not sure.
Go back and listen to our Double Impact episode. It'll be linked in the show notes.
I think I said that. I was like, you can go listen to it. We had a in-depth conversation about this stupid movie.
Never in my life would a black silk underwear.
I forgot how many times he says that in that movie, and it's at least 4 times. The only other one I'll bring up this week that's worth mentioning is the movie Witch Trap. And I know I told you a little bit about this because it's just wonderful garbage. And this is the kind of movie we would talk about at some point too. Same dude who directed Night of the Demons. Horrible acting, entertaining enough kills. I think what I said to you when I was watching it the first time, I was like, I feel like every line in this movie. I only watched it once. I haven't watched it again since, but I was like, I feel like every line in this movie was written on like a 3x5 card and given to the actor immediately before they were able to read it, then taken away from the actor and told, we have one cut to do this. And that's just what they went with for the whole movie, because the dialogue, like some of the word choices make sense. Like the words in the sentences put together make sense, but the way they are delivered, it's like, this is not like like someone jumps off out of a window and they're like, the line is something like, oh my God, he jumped out the window. And they're like, oh my God, he jumped out the window. Like the way they do it is just so bad. And yeah,
I'm going to lunch right now.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like Jeff Goldblum and Christopher Walken were all in everyone's head fighting over how to pronounce every word. And it just adds so much to this like low budget, not great horror movie that has a handful of things that you're going to be like, oh, okay. It's like, again, it's Night of the Demons guy. I'm like, oh, there's Linnea Quigley in this movie long enough to take a shower, of course. And then she's gone. And it's your typical haunted house, like, you know, people get off one by one. There's some shit that happens. But yeah, the way they read lines from start to finish, again, give this movie a fucking Oscar for that, because it's just too special. But that's all I had. I really wanted to get in the whole little semi rant about Prom Queen, because people will forget about it by the time this episode's out, so I don't want it to be too far. But that's all I got. You got anything you want to hit on before we take a break and come back and talk about Lizard?
I think that we need to get thinner.
Well, let's do that. We're going to pop some diet pills, take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll be talking about the movie Thinner. Hi everyone, AI John here. Did you know that we're on the You Run Podcast Network? YouRunPodcast.com is home to great shows like You Gonna Eat That Crust, Pop Culture Reflections Podcast, Voices of the Mausoleum, and many more. Head over to YouRunPodcast.com and find your new favorite show today. All right, so we're back, and as mentioned, we're going to be talking about the 1996 absolute classic, the movie Thinner, or as it's actually pronounced, Thinner. As always, we start with a third-party review, and this week's third-party review comes from Candace S., and she says, I absolutely dislike this movie and would give it a negative score if I could. From the main character acting to the overall storyline, it made my ass itch. If you value your time, do not watch this movie. 1 out of 5 stars.
Sound like I got some other problems going on.
I hope your ass is less itchy. This is from last year. I hope you found some hemorrhoid cream or something to help you out with that. Sean, what is the movie Thinner about?
Okay, so for that, we go over to IMDb and we look up the word Thinner, and we find a movie from 1996. This is rated R. It's an hour and 33 minutes. It gets a 5.8 out of 10 with 35,000 ratings. And we go to the storyline and the plot. Never know which one we should be reading first, but they wouldn't put on the top if you weren't supposed to read it first. This says, an obese attorney is cursed by a gypsy to rapidly and uncontrollably lose weight. And then if we scroll on down to the storyline, this comes care of Kane at Chris.com. Kane says, a fat lawyer finds himself growing thinner when an old gypsy man places a hex on him. Now the lawyer must call upon his friends in organized crime to help him persuade the gypsy to lift the curse. Time is running out for the desperate lawyer as he draws closer to his own death and grows even thinner.
This is going to be a hard one to get through.
I like the keywords underneath pantyhose based on the works of Stephen King, fellatio, psychological
Pantyhose.
thriller, and blonde woman. Pantyhose.
I don't remember any pantyhose
specifically.
Yeah. I remember the fellatio, and we're going to talk about that, but I don't remember pantyhose. But so apparently, pantyhose aside, Sean, who else is in this movie? There's two that are probably pretty recognizable.
There's a pretty, like, I looked at the cast initially and I was like, I don't know who these people are, just looking at IMDb without clicking into their profiles. But we've got, so in the title role of in the lead role, there we go, as Billy Halleck, as Thinner, we have Robert John Burke, who was RoboCop from RoboCop 3. He was Chief Bridges from BlacKkKlansman, which is a really good movie if you haven't seen it. And he's Mickey Gavin from Rescue Me, which I had no idea. We've got Lucinda Jenney, who was Iris in Rain Man. Didn't know that. We've got Joe Mantegna. How do you say that? Harry Balzania. What is it? Joe Mantegna, right? I mean, that's how you say his name.
I'll hear nothing of it. He's Fat Tony, and I feel like in this movie, he's basically playing the character Fat Tony.
He is Fat
except
Tony.
Not fat.
He's playing Richie Janelli. Yes, he's the voice of Fat Tony on The Simpsons. He's Joey Zaza from The Godfather Part 3. We've got Carrie Wurr, who plays Gina Lemke. She was in Eight-Legged Freaks. She was in Anaconda. I know her best from being in Beastmaster 2. We have Michael Constantine, who plays Tadzu Lemke from My Big Fat Greek Wedding Part 1 and 2. And we've got Daniel Van Bargen, who was Chief Duncan Hopley. He's another RoboCop 3 connection. He was in RoboCop 3. He was Chief Grady in Super Troopers. And most importantly, Kruger from Seinfeld.
That's right.
And this was directed by Tom Holland. Not that Tom Holland, but the Tom Holland that wrote and directed the original Child's Play. He wrote Child's Play 2, I believe. I think he may have written the new Child's Play, and he was the writer-director of Fright Night, the original Fright Night.
He's also done a bunch of Tales from the Crypt episodes, and that might come back up again later, too. And this movie practically ruined his career, so that's got an interesting little side note on it. But
how'd that happen?
I forget what it was
bomb,
that
wasn't it?
No,
he had like a stroke or something or something.
No,
Bell's palsy.
He had some kind. That's what it was. He got Bell's palsy, and he wasn't diagnosed with it, I guess. And I'm not a doctor, so if I'm wrong, feel free to tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
But from what I had heard with it, if he had gotten some steroid shot within like an hour of this episode that he had, he would have been just fine. Like no harm, no foul or whatever. The production team kind of got him to press on and keep doing the movie. And he didn't get the steroid shot he needed until like the next day, like over 24 hours after the fact. As a result of that, I guess there's like a 10-year gap in his filmography between this movie and whatever he did next, because he was just recovering from whatever happened with this medical episode. Again, not a doctor. I don't really know what all that entails, but I know it fucked him up for about a decade. And that kind of sucks because my opinions about Child's Play aside, stay tuned for more of those in the next like week or so. Fright Night's a great movie. And I would say that Tom Holland, I haven't seen all his stuff, but I'd say he's more good than bad. Kind of like Tom Green.
You would almost say it made him thinner.
It probably did. People don't, well, I guess depending on the disease, most people don't gain weight after they're pretty fucked up medically.
Looks like he still wrote a bunch during that period though, but he directed Thinner in 1996, Thinner 1996, and then Driven, which was a TV series in 2006.
Yeah. So, do you want me to start with the Cliff Notes version of what the story's about? Because it's a little, all right.
Please.
And then we'll get into like finding this movie and all that kind of crap. So this movie is really not that complicated. It takes some really interesting turns, and I feel like it goes through peaks and valleys. But the premise of the movie is that Billy, the lead character, RoboCop, is basically a real cop. He's a piece of shit. He's fat, and he's defending a mob guy, and he's got the body of a real cop.
Oh, so, okay, got it.
He's a horrible human being, essentially. And you learn that pretty quick. That never really changes. And at some point, he gets the most awkward roadhead in the history of awkward roadhead, which I don't even think would work with how big this guy is, like, to begin with. But
how'd her head fit between his belly and the steering wheel?
How'd she find his dick? Like, are we to believe that he has like a 14-inch dick that's going to go past his belly? I don't know if I believe that.
Thinner, too. Got a little skinny little dingling.
Maybe near the end, probably not in the middle. So she's giving him head. He runs over this carny in spectacular fashion.
It's not a carny.
Sorry, this human being of Romanian descent or whatever.
She's a Romany person. She's a gypsy.
Yes,
the movie calls her a gypsy.
Okay. Yes, the movie uses the word gypsy like
a lot
ad nauseum.
They don't like gypsies in this movie.
Yeah. But that's also kind of a product of the time. I don't even know. This book was written in 1984. I think in the big picture of things, like, you know what? I'm not even going to go down that road. So anyway, he kills this lady. He essentially gets like a sham trial, gets off with not even a slap on the wrist. Our leader of the gypsies comes up to him out of a car with a busted up window, rubs his face and goes, "Dinner." And we're off to the races. And basically for the rest of the movie, he's just like he's pounding food through the whole movie, but he's pounding food, losing weight rapidly, and quickly realizing that he's pretty much fucked. Somewhere along the lines, we also get a creature feature in here, as well as like a shoot 'em up action movie, because it takes some weird turns. But that's the very short cliffhand notes for this one. Sean, I know this is your first time watching this, but what's your history with this movie? Do you have any history? Like, do you know of it? Has it just been living in your brain, waiting to expose itself to you and say, "Dinner"?
Yeah, I mean, I've known about this movie since it came out, right? I mean, I remember seeing the trailers for it and seeing the advertisements and the poster and all that stuff. And I mean, I've said the name, like I've said "Thinner" a lot in between the time that this movie came out and especially before we started.
Said a lot in the last like 2 months.
In the last week, I have said it to my kids. I've rubbed my wife's face like that, and I've said "Thinner." I've done it to everybody I know. I think if I was actually working in an office, I probably would have done it to my boss by now, just because, you know. I'll give a little anecdote.
As you do.
When this movie came out, I was out of high school. And a friend of mine, I remember an insult that she would say about her mom is that, or just people in general would say, like, "You look like the old man from Thinner." So, you know, it'd be like, "Mom, shut up. You look like the old man from Thinner." I don't think she would say "Thinner," but that was, you know, I would just put that in my head. Yeah. But old man from Thinner was like a big insult. It was like, we would always bust out laughing when someone would say that. Yeah, I've known about the movie for a long time. I've never seen it up until this watch, but it had that stink on it that movies that are Hollywood movies that come out and you just kind of think of them as being crap, but you've never seen them. This movie definitely had that like box office bomb stink on it for me. Like it was always, oh, you want to watch Thinner? Like, no, that movie sucks. Like I'd never seen it, but I just assumed it sucked because it did like so horribly.
Yeah, for me, I remember the trailers too, and I remember being kind of like weirded out by the trailer. Like, I didn't think it was going to be this. I thought it was going to be more of a body horror movie than what we got. And I think that's kind of a common consensus around some of the criticism on this movie. I remember renting it. I don't remember if I rent it was either DVD, VHS, but I'm saying that more so to kind of put a time frame on it than anything else. But I remember renting it and watching it and thinking this was not entirely what I thought it was going to be. And then I kind of forgot about it other than the titular dinner because, you know, it's about as classic as you can get. Coming back to it now, there's actually a lot of things I didn't remember about how, like, the main stuff, like him being fat, him getting thin, and some of the like big plot points I remembered. But like the ride that this movie is, I kind of forgot about that. I think that's a good place to start with it. I'm going to go ahead and say with this, one of the things that it's going to be weird because this is kind of a like and a dislike at the same time. I like that this movie is so fucking like all over the place. Like there's points of this movie where, you know, basically once we get going, once we get past this initial where he gets the mob boss off of murder or whatever, and he goes through, you know, his Beeger scene and whatnot, like the first probably 15 minutes of this movie is basically just him shoveling food in his face with the occasional like trial shot in there. And it feels like it moves pretty quick. Once he gets like the curse put on him, it keeps right up with that. Like he's just like fucking hammering food and going nuts and having fun and all this shit. And to be fair, like been a heavier guy. If I lost weight like that, I'd probably be feeling the same way. I'd be being a dick about it too, because you feel pretty good when you lose 14 pounds in a week, I'm sure. What I didn't remember is there's a big chunk of this movie or big chunks of this movie where it's like, all right, I'm getting bored again. And then some fucking crazy shit will come out of nowhere. Like the judge's wife being drunk and screaming on the front lawn. That is so over the top that it's like, okay, I'm back in this movie. And then it kind of goes back into a lull. And then all of a sudden, here comes Lizard Man, or here comes, like, there's weird peaks in this that make the runtime of this movie feel like you feel every minute of the hour and 33 in this. And I'm not sure that's good or bad, but I like the weird ride that it takes you on from start to finish.
I'd almost counter that. I do want to say that when I saw this initially, like the trailers and stuff, I thought, wow, that makeup looks really good. And then you start to watch this movie and you're like, oh no, that's definitely like a fat suit guy. I guess Robert John Burke was actually 160 pounds in the movie, and he had to lose 20 pounds to get to that. That is what it is. I'm not going to, the makeup when he's really fat looks kind of bad, and it looks bad in different ways when he's like skinny until the end. And it looks like there are some scenes where it looks amazing because his face looks so like just hollow and just sunken and just gaunt. But I feel like this movie, the pacing of this movie, because he gets the curse put on him, the hex put on him pretty early in the movie. And I'd say like within half an hour of the movie, he's lost a ton of weight. Like he's already gone through the progression of being like a fat guy, 300-pound guy or is he 300 pounds? Or
he's like 297, I think is what they say.
I was kind of getting 300. Confused if it was 400 or 300, but he's around 300 pounds. And then by the time I'd say like 30 minutes in, maybe halfway through the movie, maybe halfway, that's probably being generous, but I think it's 30 minutes. He's already down into like, he's pretty skinny, and you would expect the rest of the movie. I'm like, how much smaller is this guy going to get? Like he's already here and halfway. So I agree with you in a respect that it feels like I did keep checking the time, but I felt like the pacing was good. It's just that he loses all the weight. He loses so much of the weight from in that first half hour. And then the rest of the movie, you're kind of like, well, he lost so much weight. He lost like 150 pounds in half an hour. And then the next half an hour, he only loses like 30. And not to say that that's like nothing, but it feels like with the movie has this real problem with it being just him going from 0 to 100. And then it's like 100 to 20. You know what I mean? It's like he hits the brakes and he's going through a residential zone for the last like probably 2/3 of the movie. It's just a really weird pace with how the beginning is so like compact and just smushed together.
I'm going to come back to the effects, but what do you think the timeline is? Like, if you're talking start of the movie to end of the movie, how long is this story supposed to take place in? Because the way it starts, it sounds like it's maybe a couple weeks, but there's points in this movie where it feels like this shit's been going on for at least a month, if not longer.
Yeah, not a month like total, but a month for each thing to happen.
Yeah,
it
it's weird. Like
all the weight loss feels like it's in a week or two. Well, maybe like a month. And then that next part feels like months, but it can't be. It's like I was saying, it's just, it doesn't feel like that works.
It almost feels like a gesture of just putting a calendar up with him like circling. Like they go through scenes where the wife has this like super old like Windows 2 computer where she's made her own little graph tracking his weight or whatever.
2, did they? Oh no, they did.
I think so.
They did.
I think there was 2 and 3, and then whatever.
3.1.
She's got this very ancient computer where she's tracking his weight and whatnot. But once they abandon that, like the idea, I don't know that they abandon it. It's more so he abandons her. But the idea of like what the time frame is in the story, it just really is like hard to have a accurate idea of how long what's happening, like what's transpiring through. With the effects, I think a lot of the effects in this movie, they're kind of a victim of HD. Because I remember when I watched this, I'm not going to go as far to say like when I watched this the first time, I was like, oh, this is like The Thing or like, Scanner, some other body horror movie that's got all kinds of great. I don't remember it being like that, but I don't remember the fat suit being so obviously a fat suit and whatnot. Like it didn't stick out like as much of a sore thumb from what I remember the first time I watched it. Watching it this time, you could see it a lot more. What I do like about the effects, though, it's kind of like a simple effect, not even one of the gross effects, with Billy, our main character. I like that they didn't go. There's a lot of like stories that they wanted to go like really overboard with the effects on him as he got thinner, like actually have chunks of skin hanging off and all kinds of gnarly stuff. And part of that would be cool to see, but I kind of like that they didn't do that. Like they kind of kept it more. I'm about to say grounded in reality, which is like a really stupid thing to say for this movie. But if you watch this movie, just like the transformation that he goes through, again, timeline aside, if you were to really starve a fat guy, this probably looks more like what you would see than something like out of an actual horror movie. I guess this is a horror movie. I don't know. It seemed more believable than what they could have done. And I kind of appreciated that they didn't push it to this like, I guess it is kind of supernatural, but they didn't push it to this like over the top thing for him specifically. His buddies, obviously, those go a little bit more creature featurey, but for him, it feels more like this super slow burn of watching this guy waste away.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I even wrote like, where did all the skin go? When you lose a bunch of weight, your skin just is loose because it doesn't have.
You see it a little bit, like you see it around his
ear.
But it's you see it around his ear and his jawline, but it's not like he can hacky sack with it or something.
Yeah. And I think your point that it's a victim of HD, I feel like if you would have seen this in the theater, it may have felt a little bit more impressive. Seeing it now, you can really see that they attach, like the makeup starts at his ears, especially his face. But like I'm saying, like later in the movie, when he's really sick, there's a time when Joe Mantegna visits him in those like cottages or whatever that he has, that he's in, and his face looks like so just drawn. He just looks so drawn out, but his body, it just looks like he's wearing like double XL clothes, but his body doesn't look small, but his face looks really emaciated. And I felt like that was a good job of makeup, because like, if you think back of special effects, like I feel like the first movie that we really noticed somebody being knowing what a regular person looks like and then someone being skinny is the original Captain America. Before Captain America goes through that whole like super soldier serum thing, he's just a little skinny, runty kid. And then he comes out and he's like Chris Evans or whatever his name is. And in this movie, it's kind of like the opposite, but they don't have the benefit of having all this money for CG. Right. So for 1996
or the technology
or whatever,
for all the CG.
Yeah, and 1996 standards, I'm sure in non-HD it would have looked perfectly fine, but looking back on it, it kind of looks a little chintzy, but I feel like it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes it looks really good, and sometimes it's like, really? Do you expect us to believe that?
Yeah, it doesn't, for me, it didn't take me out of it, though, and that might be because some of the other stuff is so ridiculous that ends up happening in it, that maybe it just plays along with it. But to be fair, a lot of that kind of comes into what you get watching movies from the 80s and the 90s on an HD TV, too.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about the humor in this movie? Because they try for it.
I think they do a relatively good job. I mean, it shares the same twisted, weird sense of humor that I have. So I didn't like laugh out loud or anything, but I appreciated the efforts at trying to make light of certain things, and even just like offhanded comments that were being made in the movie throughout. I don't have like any examples that I can give you specifically, but I felt it did a pretty good job of capturing what you expect from Stephen King. You know what I mean? It might not have followed. I don't know the original story. I don't know how closely it followed that. I don't think it probably followed very closely, but it felt like it captured the voice of Stephen King, that kind of wry, dry sense of humor without going overboard with it.
I'd agree with that. The one thing that you said you didn't laugh out loud at anything. The one thing I did laugh out loud at, like quite a bit, actually, like I think I had to rewind it because I wanted to watch it again. I laughed my fucking ass off when he was all skinnied out and came home and he was just eating the fucking rotisserie chicken like it was an apple. I don't know why. Like, he pulls this, it's already like kind of carved up. It's not like he took a fresh chicken out, but he's just sitting there. He just like bare palms this whole chicken and just starts ripping into it, only to go like practically assault his wife throughout through the scene and go nuts. But him just, I don't know, maybe it's because I've never done that, but I kind of was envious and laughing at the idea of this guy just standing in his kitchen, just chomping away at a hunk of chicken.
I do have to say, the scene with the pie and the gypsy cuts his hand and he pours the blood on it and the pie starts like bubble. I laughed like the first time that happened. I laughed. That was the big laugh that I got. I laughed so hard at that scene. I'm like, this looks so ridiculous. This thing's like got a mouth on it and it's just weird.
I thought it looked more like a pussy, but sure. And
yes,
I thought it looked even funnier when he brought it home and it was bubbling on the counter. I was like, it hasn't calmed down yet. Like, okay,
no,
so
it's ready.
It hasn't coagulated. No, it's ready to go. So do you have any negatives you want to point out for this one?
I mean, I think I've already kind of mentioned, I thought the makeup it's a plus and a minus. Like, I thought it looked really bad around the ears. I thought that the pie was just a ridiculous effect. I laughed again, like super out loud. And the makeup was hit or miss, essentially, for me. Mm-hmm. Like, there are times when he looks more like a 200-pound guy, like I said, in a double XL flannel or something, rather than a 130-pound guy just swimming in his clothes. So I think my big complaints are more like effect based rather than story based. Like, I really didn't have much of a problem. I know that you said yours were like you had problems with the pacing, but I honestly, like, watching it, I just wanted to see how far they've gotten this far in the story, like telling the story about how he's essentially getting thinner, and then how much is left of this movie for them to do all the other stuff that they want to do in this movie. So I checked the clock or the time remaining a lot, but it wasn't because I was not enjoying it. It was more so of like, how are they going to fill out the rest of this movie? That I kept wondering that as the movie went on.
For me, the reason why I have a problem with the pacing in this movie, it's not so much the watch checks, is because like I said earlier, there's peaks and valleys in this. There's something crazy that will happen, and then it's, 5 to 10 minutes of him eating and trying to figure out what the fuck is wrong. There were moments in the movie where I found myself getting kind of bored with it. And I was really quite happy that I think they were aware that it had moments where it could get boring, because all of a sudden here comes like Fat Tony either answering because when you have a medical problem, what's called the mafia guy? That makes sense. Yeah. And he just asked,
you should have called me so much earlier.
Right. So I like that when he shows up and the movie really ratchets up and basically turns into an action movie for the last 10 minutes or something. I was like, okay, so we're changing the pace here. I'm not sure this makes sense from a narrative perspective, but at least some shit's happening now other than watching this guy eat. The way that they It's interesting because like there's no likable characters in this movie really at all. Like they're all pieces of shit people to some extent, except for maybe the wife. They really try to force the idea that his wife is having an affair with this doctor. They never explicitly say it, and I'm not 100% sure that I feel like I bought it, but they really heavy-handedly try to make you think that. With the possible exception of the wife, though, everyone's a dirtbag, so there's really no redeeming people. And if she is having an affair, then you could call her a dirtbag too, if you feel that way. You don't feel bad for what happens to any of these people, really. And I feel like, spoilers for the ending of this movie. I feel like him kissing her at the end was probably not the smartest move on his part before he decided to just kind of finish off the pie anyway. But because I was like, they never really like specify how much of this you need to eat to be like kind of proper fucked. I was like, and maybe he's just saying that because he knows what he fed her. Like maybe he didn't really, but I was like, I wouldn't even risk that. Like, you got a fucking like husk of a wife next to you that's all like gooed out and melted now. Like you might want to figure out what you have to do with that so you don't end up back in court now.
He had such a vendetta against his wife that it was almost like, dude, you set out to do something and you did it. Just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing about Kruger is that I've only seen him really, I mean, I've seen him in several things, but the performance of his that always sticks out to me is obviously from Seinfeld. And him in this role, when they show him and he's all deformed and all swollen and all that stuff on half of his body, I really enjoyed his kind of unhinged performance where he starts to just like, here, take my gun, go kill this guy, all this stuff. I really like seeing that performance out of him, but it was just such a Kruger, him playing the character of Kruger is the thing that really just sticks out in my mind as to how he is. I mean, you get these like ideas in your head of how people are based on roles they play. But so when he's acting like, just again, take my gun, go kill that fucking guy or whatever he says, I was just like, man, this is a really strong performance for a really small part in this movie.
I would have liked to seen more of the other two curses, especially like them applying the curse. Like, so we have whatever Kruger turns into. They never really say what his curse is. He's just deformed. And like I said, he kind of looks like the Thing on a diet.
He's like all blistered up. Yeah.
Yeah, something. The judge, whatever his name is, they start by trying to write all this off. Right. They start by trying to write all this off as like, for him, they say psoriasis because he's got the skin cat. So they find you get this awkward shower scene with, still fat Billy and Judge. And he's got this weird, like, whatever. It doesn't look like psoriasis. It looks like a burn to me, but he's got this thing on his stomach that he's like fucking with. He's like, did that, gypsy say something to you? He goes, he's rubbing his face and not saying what he goes, I don't know what the fuck he said to me, blah, 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 blah. He goes home. We get to his drunk wife later. And again, his wife is one of the best like actors in this movie because she's just nuts. When she says that the curse that he put on him was lizard, I was like, why didn't we get a scene of him going up to the other people? Because apparently there's 4 people that get cursed. One we don't really see. We got Kruger, we got the wizard, and we got Thinner. Those 3. I want scenes of the guy going up to him going, lizard. Or I don't even know what he would say to K. Uger, but just because it would have been...
there.
It's all 2 syllables. But yeah, we could probably go on about this for a while, but this, I don't know. I think it's time to fire up the grill and kind of wrap it up on this one.
Then you're in for a big treat, bro, because it's hot dog time.
I'll lead us off. I'm the one who's the veteran of thin air. Revisiting this is worth a watch. Like, this is definitely firmly in the like wacky, drugged out Stephen King like lexicon. This is not like some of his more renowned works, I wouldn't think. I'm not even 100% sure I would call this a horror movie so much as I guess you would for lack of better wording, but it's entertaining for what it is. It's fucking ridiculous. It's racially insensitive and it's offensive to pretty much everyone, every gender that's in, or every type of person that's in this movie. But for what it is, RoboCop's pretty good in the role, even though he's a prick through the whole movie. Fat Tony delivers something interesting in the movie, even though as soon as I realized he was Fat Tony, I couldn't think of him as anything other than Fat Tony. And it's quotable, it's kind of laughable, and although it has this weird plotting like pacing to it, I don't feel like I wasted an hour and a half. So it's a solid half a hot dog for me. It's not one that I think you have to watch, but if you have the opportunity, I don't feel like you're going to be pissed off about it.
Whose hot dog is this, huh? Is it yours?
For me, I remember when this movie came out and I thought it looked hilariously stupid, but I just never got around to watching it. The trailers really didn't do it much justice, or maybe it did, with telling you all about cinema. But, you know, I don't agree with Billy's motivations and him basically blaming this entire story. All the shit that happens in this movie is he blames his wife the entire time. So I think that's where that whole like affair angle comes from. He's just so wrapped up in this psychosis of blaming his wife that everything is her fault. But I thought the movie was paced pretty well. Like, I know that you said that you had issues with pacing. I did look at how much time was left a few times, but I thought it moved pretty smoothly, all things considered. I thought it was a lot of fun. Billy loses all the weight really quickly, so I was surprised to see that they kind of kept up the pacing, even though he lost all the he got thinner so quickly. I had problems with the makeup, but overall, it was kind of a light watch. This is a movie that's really something that you could kind of put on and have in the background. I know we've kind of said that occasionally, is like, I just turn this on and I watch it in the background, and you don't have to pay attention to it too much. It's never like too heavy or too much to pay attention to. I mean, for me, I think this is a full hot dog. I really enjoyed it. I'd never seen it. I can still call people old man from thinner, but had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun all this week, like putting my hand up against my kids' faces and being like, thinner, or my wife. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, nothing. Just putting a curse on you. No big deal.
Love it. Do your kids have therapists? Because they're going to be like, my dad is just telling me I'm fat constantly.
Right.
I don't understand what's going on. He just keeps smacking me in the face and saying thinner. I don't get it.
But the way
then he made me watch
he's not
Scream.
just saying thinner. He's not just saying thinner. He's saying thinner. No, and I'm just saying, and just so everybody knows, I'm not saying it because I think they're fat. I'm just saying it because it's fun to say.
I didn't mean it like that, but okay. I'm glad you had to clarify.
Thinner.
All right. So before we get into this week's question of the week, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We did get a response from Scott, who is the overlord of the You Run Podcast Network. This was in response to a question of the week that I want to say was on the Body Slam episode. It might have been the Firepower episode. I'm not sure at the moment. But he took the time to send us a voice message explaining what he wants to see in a wrestling movie featuring a wrestler that had not been in a film before. So it must have been the Firepower movie, because
his answer was Virgil, which I think we both really kind of, I don't know about you so much, but I know I pretty uncategorically like just laughed at him. Like, Virgil, really?
Yeah. So without further ado, we present Scott telling us why he wants to see Virgil in a movie.
And what the idea is, which I think the idea is actually pretty fucking genius, to be honest, but let's go ahead and play it.
Well, Scott is a genius, so that makes sense.
Hey guys, I wasn't just throwing out a random thing with Virgil. I've got a film pitch. So the film pitch is this. Virgil's known for going to all these conventions and kind of having no one at his stall ever. So we're in this scenario, Virgil's there, everyone's got queues, Virgil hasn't. Virgil then starts killing off the other people. It's a horror movie. So he kills off the $1 Million Man, then Hulk Hogan, then all of the other wrestlers who are stopping him getting a queue at his desk, and then he starts to develop a queue as these people disappear, and we'll have a detective in there who's trying to solve the case and trying to work out who's doing the killing. So yeah, think Seven, but set in a wrestling convention with Virgil as the killer. I think it's got 5-star movie written all over it. Also, great episode this week, guys. And thanks a lot for sharing my strange obsession with Virgil.
I just want to add on to Scott's answer. Like I said to you separately, like, oh yeah, before I even listened to this, I said, Yeah, I saw Virgil. Like, how could Virgil be the star of a movie? I've seen him at Comic-Cons. Well, I think he's actually passed away, but when I saw him at Comic-Cons, he would always just be at a table by himself. Like, nobody would want to see him or get their picture taken with him or get autographs or whatever. And then Scott, when I played this message, I was like, this is perfection. This is actually a really good idea. Scott, if you can get funding, if you can hire a Virgil lookalike, because again, I don't think he's with us anymore, I would totally go see this movie. This is like a A++ film idea.
You had me at 7, but it's a wrestling convention starring Virgil. So, and that brings us to this week's question of the week. And we only had a couple responses, and they were way nicer than I thought they were going to be. But this week we asked, if you could infuse a pie with a curse, what curse do you infuse it with, and who would be unlucky enough for you to take the first bite? So our first response is from our friend Sam, and he's over on Instagram. You can follow him at his new podcast handle, which is at Screen Talk Pod, or still at Feature Creatures DTF. And Sam says, the curse is going to be your greed would literally eat you away. And he said the victim would be anyone with over $10 million. So very non-selective curse, but I'm here for it. Then over on Blue Sky, Dudes on Movies, or at Dudes on Movies, they're a podcast, and they say if a cursed person was exceedingly wealthy, it would leave them with enough money to live a sane, modest lifestyle, then redistribute the rest of their holdings to help the less fortunate. They'd also be issued better friends. People are so much nicer than what I'm going to say here in a second. Sean, do you have a curse that you would put in a pie and feed to someone? For me, the curse I would put into a pie. So I'm going to start with, I would feed it to anyone who wears the shoes Hey Dudes or Crocs. You wear Hey Dudes or Crocs, this is coming your way.
Hey, my
and
kids
what the
wear
curse
Crocs.
is, okay, anyone who wears Hey Dudes and Crocs and is not related to Sean directly.
Wow.
Maybe some of the extended family, but not the immediate family.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
So,
I think so.
That's who's getting the curse. The curse is, after you eat this pie, doesn't matter how many times you do laundry, doesn't matter if you buy new socks, every time you put on a sock, it's a cum sock. Every single time. It's always fresh. There's nothing you can do about it. You can take them off and put on another pair. They're just all going to be cum socks every single time.
That's pretty awful.
Yep. It's the cum sock curse. And we could call it cum sock.
Cum sock.
Still 2 syllables.
I don't really have anything. There's so many, I don't know, people that really annoy me. If they ate the pie, could they just disappear?
I think that's called murder, but
like,
yes.
No. They wouldn't die. They would just disappear. And I don't mean they would just vanish. They'd be gone. Like, I wouldn't have to hear about them anymore. That'd be pretty awesome, actually, though. That'd be, I don't know.
I mean, until the police started coming around and be like, all these people disappeared after eating Sean's pie.
Oh, shit.
You're like, I don't know.
You didn't hear this. You'll become a person that annoys me. You vanish. You disappear.
I don't think there's going to be any criminal investigation if all your socks turn into cum socks, even when they're clean to start.
Maybe. What if they take the sock off and they kill somebody, and then your DNA is all over the crime because
I didn't say it was my cum.
Whose cum is it? Where are you sourcing this cum? Is this overseas cum? Is this
it's curse cum? It doesn't need to be sourced. It's just
it's not domestic. It's import cum. Are you
sometimes
importing
it's their
cum?
cum? Sometimes it's animal cum. Sometimes it's
Animal
girl cum.
Wow, rough.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
It could be different kinds of cum.
It could be different kinds of cum in the same sock. So
male and female.
It's a real sock glory hole in there. It's a real mess. Wow. So
yikes. No, I will never be wearing Crocs.
Well, or Hey Dudes.
Or Hey, yeah. Well, that's not going to happen anyways. But
well, good. So
is Hey Dudes like a national thing, or is it just like has to be
the brand?
Right?
Yeah. Those stupid fucking shoes are available all over.
Do they all have the mock
like
toe?
Them things? I believe so.
I don't think.
I don't know. I'm not a Hey Dudes expert.
Dudes that have. I think I've seen Hey Dudes that are like tennis shoes.
I'm sure they're still ugly as shit. So you looking up Hey Dudes now?
I am.
You're gonna get ads for Hey Dudes. So while Sean's looking up Hey Dudes, we're gonna wrap this up. Just like a tightly wound cum sock, we're gonna say if you would like to follow us, you can do that on any social media network. We are at Dewey Podmonster, except on Blue Sky, where we're at crap.town. That is where we post the question of the week. So please do keep an eye out for that. Additionally, you can go to our site, which is crap.town. That's where all of our everything is. You can get links to everything there, as well as send us feedback if you'd like to. Want to request a movie, you want us to talk about dinner too. Dinner. Yeah, see? You can send us requests there, feedback, whatever you want to do. We'd appreciate it. You can also go to yourunpodcast.com. That we are members of the You Run Podcast Network, and we would like you to go there. You can check out our stuff there, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. Sean, I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff. What am I forgetting? And bring us home.
Well, you're forgetting that Hey Dudes makes Jaws themed shoes. They also make some tennis shoes, casual looking shoes. If you want your answer to the question of the week that John just read earlier, read on this here show, you got to answer that there question. And you can find that there question on all the social media that John cares about. You can find us at Dewey Podmonster, or if you're on Blue Sky, like John said, it's at crap.town. You can also follow me at internalbleeding.crap.town on Blue Sky exclusive. If you want to find out any information on any of the things that we talked about on this show, you can check it out in the show notes. Most of that stuff is free. We try to bring it to you free if we can. If we can't find a free link to bring you, it's going to be an Amazon link. You can tell that it's an Amazon link because it'll say Amazon in parentheses after the link.
What?
If you click that link, yeah, I know, crazy. If you click that link, you watch that thing, you buy that thing that we talk about, we get a few cents on the dollar. That helps the show. It's probably the best way to help the show. If you want to help the show, otherwise, leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. Give us 5 stars. Say how awesome we are. If you think we're not awesome, give us 5 stars and tell us how shitty we are. And that's fine as long as you give 5 stars. That's all that matters. John?
That's it. That's all we got. Until next week, swill up, Butthorns. We'll talk to you soon.
Bird season's over, Butthorn.
He also has a new podcast called Screen Talk Pod, I think. Hold on. I'm going to start that over. I want to make sure I get that right.
It's a Red Hot Chili Peppers themed podcast, and it's called Ziba Baba Booba Booba Dabba DB.
I don't think it is.